We're here at Leading Sports Solicitor Beswick Sports to chat to director Gary Mellor about the USA, his clients and Stoke City. But first, let's head back to the Etihad where me and Dan are going to have a quick chat. Let's go. Yeah, that's right. Here we are back at the Etihad Stadium to talk Southgate and Sofia, Hazard's move to the Spanish capital, and me and Dan went to visit Gary Mellor, the sports solicitor, recently. But first, Dan, welcome back.
Good to be here.
We'll talk Sofia, we'll
Yep.
talk the England performance. What were your thoughts on the original performance?
Well, I thought it was a really good performance. If we're obviously analysing what happened on the pitch, I thought all the goals were fantastic. There's a lot to be admired in all of them. I thought the likes of Mings making his debut with a lot of positives.
I would imagine that'll be something you want to talk about.
Obviously, all the time, we might as well just name this entire episode the Mings one, because I could talk all day about that bloke. But it kind of leads me nicely onto my next point, to be honest with you, is that obviously what went on in the stands, and obviously Mings was a target for a lot of that, which was a terrible shame, because I do feel as though that's marred certainly his memories of his England debut. But no, as I said, it was completely overshadowed by what was going on in the terraces. It's got no place anywhere in society, let alone in football. And I think a lot of the England players, and probably the fans as well, came away from that feeling a little bit dissatisfied with a 6-0 win, which is a shame really, because as I said, it was a good performance, but obviously with what's going on around you, there is a certain level of importance to it all, and it certainly took control.
And we will come back to the racism problem, but first we'll talk about the game itself. England were dominant, 72% possession, 20 shots. Southgate's side kind of made up for the disappointment against the Czech Republic, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think it took 7 minutes, and someone took control of Marcus Rashford like they were playing on FIFA. He spun his right back inside and out, taking him all the way to the bank. And then it's a great shot. You can definitely point things at the goalkeeper, in my opinion. He's an absolute Western super in goal. Really should stop that, but it's a brilliant goal from Rashford.
I need to explain Western Super as Western Supermare, as in nightmare. There's a lot of people who won't know what that is.
But yeah, it was a brilliant goal by Rashford. Obviously, you've got to take the positives, and yeah, the next one was nice as well. Ross Barkley finishing off a nice pass from Sterling. Again, Harry Kane involved. I think one of the most underrated aspects of his game is his passing. I think he's one of the best in terms of that aspect, one of the more complete number 9s in world football. And then after that second goal, that's where we got the first pause for racism. The first step of the UEFA protocol was engaged, and it kind of went downhill from there, didn't it?
So we'll talk about the UEFA protocol now we've come on to it. There's a 3-step protocol. Mm-hmm. The first one is for the tannoy announcement, which went out across the stadium to ask obviously them to stop it, basically. I don't know what the exact words used were. The second step is the suspension of the game for 5 or so minutes, which the referee did. He stopped play, halted the play, spoke to the managers, and I think Southgate and Kane dealt with it fantastically. The whole England team were very delicate in the way they did it, I suppose.
Yep.
But they dealt with it well, and had it have come to it, the third step would have been the game being abandoned. Do you think it was almost at that point? Do you think we nearly got there?
Yeah, no, I think it was really close, especially with that second stop before half time. And it's one of those where it's split opinions really, because obviously a lot of people are saying, if you stop the game, then you're allowing the Oasis to win in a certain way. I'm not sure I agree with that personally, because obviously it's good that they stayed out there, and it's good that they completed the game, and they won in the manner in which they did, but I'm not sure that continuing to subject them to the racist abuse, because yes, obviously we saw that huge section of the crowd that was taken out at half time, and rightly so, but the racial abuse continued after that. You could hear every time Mings, Sterling, Rashford got on the ball that there was noises coming from the crowd. They were being booed, there was monkey chanting, and it continued really, and I'm not really sure that is the right way to do. I think, to be honest with you, if it was up to me, I probably would have pulled the players off the pitch. But I think it's a huge testament to Southgate and the players that because I understand at half time there wasn't much of a team talk, they all went in, and I think every member of staff in the England camp had their say on it, and they came to the decision that they were going to play the game out. And if that's what they wanted to do, and that's how they feel that they've kind of applied themselves, in coordination with the protocol, then I respect that.
I think as a young squad they showed some real maturity about it as well. Mings obviously had a bit of a lash out at the assistant referee, but when you hear that kind of thing, it's hard not to. Barkley obviously with his celebration made some gestures.
Well done, Ross. Well done. We all thought it.
And Raheem obviously was very subdued in his celebration, but maybe that's just he doesn't want to taunt them, he doesn't want it anymore. But then obviously after the game on social media, Sterling was very prominent in having his say. Back to the game. So obviously we had all of that, and it really was disappointing to see. England ran out 6-0 winners though. After the pauses in play, we got another 4 goals. And they were all very good goals, very, very well worked.
Masterful, absolutely masterful. Again, I want to talk about Harry Kane. For the Sterling goal, which I celebrated really hard just before half-time. It was after the second stop, and you could see it was starting to get to Sterling. When he put that second goal in, I was up off my sofa, it was brilliant. Kane starts it off. It's a great ball down the right to Trippier. Trippier puts a beautifully weighted ball back down the inside, who rolls it across to Sterling. He seems to get all his goals from that same spot, doesn't he? In the 6-yard box. But no one's complaining. Again, he gets another goal around the 70th minute, and then Kane, obviously, he wouldn't be in England. 6-0 rout. If that man didn't get on the score sheet, he completed it towards the end. It had been coming. You could see, in his celebration that he was happy to get it, because I think he did the post. Woodwork maybe a couple of times before that. But it kind of these kind of games, and if you're trying to take positives from it, which is hard, these incidents will really bind this England squad together. You saw that. I think it might have been Ben Chilwell that said, they came as a team and left as a family, coming from that game. And these are the kind of incidents that will really bond these England players together, especially going to a major tournament like Euro 2020 next summer. These kind of incidents will really rally them, and it will. A lot of other teams in Europe won't be, and hopefully aren't subjected to this, but if you are trying to take a positive from it, is that it really has seemed to have rallied the England team together. I think they dealt with it well, and it showed on the pitch how well, and the chemistry between these guys, and how well they were kind of operating at the moment.
You talk about Sterling and Kane. Sterling's been directly involved in 13 goals in the 2020 qualifying bid. Kane in 15 in his last 10. Been involved in, so it is a front line that really is firing on all cylinders when it comes to international football. Maybe not at club football level at the moment, but international football, we've got one of the best attacks around.
Well, yeah, I think the best front threes in the world. Liverpool's is first, and then I think England comes second. Sancho, Sterling, and Kane is absolutely outrageous, to be honest with you. And then I think it's unfortunate the likes of Tammy didn't get a run out. I would like for him to. Okay.
I'm sick
I'm
of
not even going to buy
Tammy Abraham. Absolutely sick of it. Good player, but you treat him like
it's the
Jesus.
Villa League as well. I would love to have seen Tammy out there. It's a shame, but obviously I suppose in those surroundings, it would have been a lot to bring a young lad like that on and subject him to that. But no, I think it all good. The England front three is really good. Obviously, I know Sancho came on later in the game. Rashford started on the left. But it's really promising, and I think when you look at the under-21s, also got a massive result against Austria. Callum Hudson-Odoi and Phil Foden are running rings around that, and there is such a wealth of attacking options that this England side's had at the moment, and it's a selection dilemma for Southgate because especially in the midfield now, we just have this bank of talent that he can tap into. It's going to be hard for him to decide who starts in the next game. But Sterling and Kane have to be the first names on the team sheet. I'm convinced those two are absolutely world beaters right now. And as you said, one is showing it domestically, one isn't. But when they pull on that England shirt, Ross Barkley, prime example of that. Pulls on an England shirt, morphs into prime Frank Lampard. Unbelievable stuff. I was complaining at the lineup, I have to say, when it came out. I thought Rashford shouldn't have been starting. I didn't think Kane should have been starting. Barkley should have been starting. There was a lot of problems. I didn't think Trippier should have been starting at right back.
You're really not a big fan of Kieran Trippier, really?
I'm not. I'm not. He's slowly convinced me. I watched a lot of his performances in La Liga, and he put in a good performance the other night. It must be said, he's turned himself around. But Trippier could become, 2-3 times the player that he is, and I still want Trent at right back. I think he offers. So I think he's one of the best right backs in the world. Trent. I think he offers something that no other right back can. I think he's so confident and calm for his age when he gets on the ball, and I think his passing ability is absolutely unrivaled. But the team that Southgate put out is positive because it shows that we can rotate these players, and it's probably not the strongest England side that we could possibly field, but a 6-0 win in circumstances like that suggests that we've got a really good thing going right now.
And we talk about Southgate, so obviously he was caretaker manager for 4 games, and then he took over as the actual manager. He's had 35 games in permanent charge, won 22 of them, lost 8. There was doubt about him. Okay, so we came out of the Euro tournament where we played so well. We had a couple of poor performances at the back of it, and that's where people started to kind of worry about him. Has that Bulgaria result kind of proved that he is the man to keep taking this England team forward and get to where they need to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there is some level of criticism being directed towards Southgate, especially after that Czech Republic game. I think, as I mentioned then, people had a few issues with his team selection. He was his premise has always been that he would pick players on form, but starting the likes of Rashford and Barkley don't necessarily reflect that, and I think that kind of angered a lot of people. But he got it right because he put those players out and they did the job. I mean, I have to be honest, I was sceptical of Gareth Southgate's appointment when he first was appointed. I think after we went through the whole turmoil of the Sam Allardyce situation and turned into someone like Southgate, I thought, he's just a kind of another inside man from the FA. Very likeable. Thought he was kind of an easy choice, a bit of a people pleaser. But he's revolutionised this England side, and I think this project, the players that we bring in, and the kind of the way that we're generating our youth players now is something that started 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe. So we're starting to see the benefits of a very long-term project, and I think Southgate is absolutely the right man to be at the helm of it.
Southgate, a man who's been involved in the England setup now for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he started as the youth coordinator, went on to manage the England under-21. So he is probably the perfect man to take this young squad forward. He's got experience with youth. He did at Middlesbrough. He tried it. But I think international football is definitely Southgate's level role in football.
Absolutely, and I think in a lot of aspects he's the best in the managerial field. I think in terms of the media and the way that he handles the media, especially the England press, and it's often said the second most important job in England after the Prime Minister is the England national manager's role, and they often come under so much fire from the media, but he handles it so well. He's almost got the English media on his side, which has never happened before, not in my memory, for an England manager. He handles it superbly. He's so calm and collected, and I just think the way that if you watch the game, the Bulgaria game, the way that he stood there with all this chaos going on around him, hands in pockets, coolest man in the stadium. No waistcoat.
Got rid of the waistcoat.
Probably for the best. You wouldn't want to see that tarnished. We'll put it up there. We have good memories of that. But no, absolutely brilliant from Gareth, the way that he handled the matter. I think it's just testament to the kind of how cool he is generally in front of in high pressure situations like that.
So obviously the game was a qualifier for the 2020 tournament. How do you think that tournament will pan out in the end? Obviously we're going to qualify if we don't. It's almost mathematically impossible, but when we qualify, when we go to the tournament, how well do you think as a team they're going to perform in another tournament on the back of that one that we so successfully had?
I think we'll do well. Obviously the semis and the final being at Wembley is a kind of something fateful perhaps. I think we're far from the strongest side in Europe at the moment. I think France are still going to take a lot of beating. They're kind of showing some slowing down. They're not quite operating on the full capacity that they were at the World Cup. They drew with Turkey most recently. But Germany look phenomenal at this moment in time, and that is not something we said at the last World Cup, but I watched them play against Argentina in the international break, and they were phenomenal. So I think you've got to look at them. Holland are coming back and in a big way. So there's a lot of sides that we have to compete with, but I think we'll do very well. I think we could possibly be looking at another run to the semi-finals again at the very least. And as you said, you kind of want to play on that coming back to Wembley. That's what the kind of narrative that you want to play on with this England side, because I don't think we're the strongest, in terms of personnel, but those can be the differences, and I would love to. Wouldn't it be brilliant to see England even get to a final?
And that's the kind of thing that's going to appeal to the squad, to drive them, probably motivate them a bit more to put that extra little bit of effort in. So basically, what we're saying is England are going to be champions.
Well, I can't see any other way around it, to be honest with you.
Fantastic. Me and Dan went to speak to Gary Mellor, sports lister. How did you find that experience, Dan?
Brilliant. Something very different to perhaps what you get in a normal interview, with a player or whatever. Opens up what it's like to do a transfer from the inside. Talking, he had a huge role in the setup of Orlando City, which he spoke about. It was incredibly interesting. My favourite interview I've done to date, I must say.
Big show. We'll take a look at part of that interview now. The rest of it will be on the YouTube channel later this week. But first, we'll listen to a bit of Gary Mellor. Today we're joined by Gary Mellor of Beswick Sports. Gary, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we get into it, if you could just tell the viewers a bit about you. What's a day or a week in the life of Gary Mellor?
I've sat 3 days down in London working at the Leaders in Football Conference, which was well attended by people from UCFB I saw yesterday as well. So they're obviously looking for opportunities for their students and partnerships. The world of football comes together, and a number of conferences around the world. I think Leaders is one of the better ones, together with SoccerX. So it's good to go there because it saves you flying around the world. And you've got clubs like Valencia there, Atlanta United, so clubs from all around the world, and that's a good thing to do. Primarily, I'm the managing director of a sports management company. We do a lot of work in North America, but in reality the world's a small place, and there's not a market that we don't work in. We've been doing a lot of work in Argentina in the last 12 months. So it's the world of sport is it's a global sport. It has no boundaries, and that's one of the most attractive things about working in that industry.
And the life of a sports agent solicitor, it can't be an easy one, especially you've got quite a few high profile clients now.
Yes.
What do you do to get away from the office and relax sometimes?
My wife would say I do a 7-day working week. Watching Stoke City play is not relaxing at the moment, I have to say, so that's not so good. I've enjoyed the Cricket World Cup. I love sport, that's why I work in this industry. I think if you find something you have a passion for, you tend to do it better. So if you have an interest, I can't imagine getting up in the morning not wanting to go to work.
Yeah.
And I enjoy travel. So
it's a good job.
Well, if you go to a meeting with DC United, I'll always try and find a couple of hours at the end of the day and have a walk and see the White House and see the Mall and see and see the rest of the city. Because if you don't understand the city you're looking to work in, then I think that's not healthy. I've been lucky enough with international cricket. We've done a lot of international cricket over the years to go to some fantastic places in India, South Africa, New Zealand. And getting to see the Sydney Opera House and everything, and then going to an international one-day cricket match the day after, that can be the good part of the job.
So bringing it back to the day job, we're going to talk about some of your clients, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Joe Rodriguez got his move back to Burnley in the summer. How happy were you to get that deal done, and how happy was he to go back to Turf Moor?
Yeah, I think he's gone home, hasn't he, which I think is nice. Jay had a phenomenal... We moved Jay from Burnley many years ago to Southampton, where he played for Maurizio Pochettino, got himself into the England squad, was the leading English goal scorer in the Premier League when he got his injury at Manchester City, was in the England squad. The World Cup was looking like he was nailed on to go to Brazil, had a horrendous injury, and obviously it was tough for Jay to come back from that over 18 months, and Southampton then sold him to West Brom. Loved his time at West Brom, but unfortunately it came with relegation. Decided to stay loyal despite opportunities to move back to the Premier League to try and get West Brom back up. And him and Dwight Gale, I think they scored 45 goals between them, but wasn't to be. They lost out to Aston Villa in the playoffs. We had a lot of interest from various clubs in the Premier League, but I think that there was a part of Jay that always wanted to go back to Burnley. His friends and family are there, and I think he's enjoying it, and they're doing well.
Talking of transfers, it's not a very publicised model, the transfer. Obviously people know that transfers happen, but can you just talk about behind the scenes of transfer from interest into getting the contract signed?
Look, I mean, it's there's so much interest in the football transfer market is global, as we know, and we saw that just in the last week that Inter Milan were going for Jay Rodriguez in January, but a lot of paper talk isn't necessarily real. You just have to. We've got the ability, because we've been doing this for so long, that we can pick the phone up and speak to someone at any club in the world probably, and they'll know who we are, and that's because we have a brand. the Longstaff brothers who played for Newcastle United successfully against Manchester United weekend. The whole summer was full of news of Manchester United wanting Sean Longstaff. But obviously if Newcastle United don't want to sell his contract for a number of future years, they don't have to. So you've got to have a willing seller and a willing buyer. There's only so many players that have the real power. The club has the power, despite what you read.
So, like, from your position, do you think that paper talk affects either you or the player themselves? Do you see that having an influence?
Steve Bruce alluded to the fact he felt that all the Manchester United talk may have played on Sean Longstaff's mind. I don't think he did. You know, he's recovering from an injury. I think he's a very well balanced young man. There's no doubt that last year with Jay, you know, there's lots of Premier League clubs pushing for Jay, that he probably did unsettle him a little bit during pre-season, wondering whether he should stay or go. But due to his relationship with Darren Moore, I think he decided when we signed an agreement with them to stay for another 12 months, I think that settled him down. I think it does. People react differently to situations. I think no one individual's the same. And you're not human if you're not flattered, if you get big Champions League clubs interested in you, and you know, and obviously a footballer's career is very short. We just talked about Jay Rodriguez's injury. I mean, at that time we had Liverpool, Manchester City, Tottenham, all the Champions League teams were desperate to sign Jay Rodriguez, an English player, top of the goal scoring charts, and you know, and then he gets the injury and he stays at Southampton, and obviously Southampton looked after him really well, but if he'd have made one of those moves, you know, it's life changing.
And if we move away from football for a second, because you cover a lot of sport here in Beswicks, how much do you see a difference from the football world, which is probably the biggest market that you deal with, to the other sports, the cricket, the boxing?
Look, I mean, boxing, if you've got, like, we guided Kettle Smith through the World Boxing Super Series, became world champion, knocking out George Groves in Saudi Arabia. Those are telephone numbers too as well when you get to that level. What people tend to forget is that every sport there are people, you only see the top 10%, what they earn. The reality is another 90% of people that are trying to make a living and feed their family and look after them, and that's the difficult bit. But you look at clubs like, sports like cricket, where in reality they're not that well paid jobs unless you actually get to the top and you're playing in the IPL and you're playing for your country. A lot of cricketers are earning quite poor wages really, and they're doing it because they love the sport, and they really, everyone would like to play professional sport for a living, but I think a lot of sports like your rugby league, your rugby union, cricket, they're not of the same level as football.
So we spoke to Adam Yates just a couple of weeks ago, and that's not news. He retired early, and this is one of the things that you offer, like with your position and your job, is kind of post-career planning. Absolutely. What does that entail? Could you tell us a little bit more about that? I
think it's more about talking to your players about what they want to do when they finish. And not every player that you have is a Premier League player. I mean, we've got 170 odd players on that board out there that we represent. A lot of those players have got to find other careers when they finish playing, especially the level that Adam played at. With respect to Adam, and especially if we had Clive Clark, who was one of my players. He had a heart problem playing for Leicester on loan at Nottingham Forest, and he thought he'd probably got another 5 or 6 years earning ahead of him. And you've got to always be aware, so it's never too early to start to talk to people about what they want to do. If they want to stay in the game, we'll actually get them involved in taking the coaching badges. We'll tell them if we think they need to do that. Some people think that they don't want to stay in the game, and then when they finish, they realise they don't want to do anything else. And people. John McGreal, the Colchester manager, I remember, when he was at Burnley and Ipswich, he played in Europe and the Premier League. He was looking forward to getting away from the game, but when he did move away from the game, he realised that just how much he loved it and went back into it. So it's difficult because as a 21-year-old, you're not the same as you are when you're probably 32, 33. Life seems great for you two at the moment, I'm sure. The world's your oyster, but when you get to my age, it looks a bit different.
So that was the interview with Gary Mallett. It'll be on the YouTube channel later this week. Let's talk about Eden Hazard at Real Madrid, to a team and a player that really catch your eye, but Hazard's not really doing it in Spain at the moment.
No, it's I was fortunate enough to watch his first game for Real. It was in pre-season friendly against Bayern Munich. We covered it on the Dawson Instagram story, did an Instagram takeover. That was his first game, and he came into pre-season overweight, visibly. poor from him because he's been talking about this move for so long, and he's been greasing his palms at the prospects, and every time possible, name dropping Real Madrid in interviews for years and years and years. It's always been known that that's his dream destination. Yeah. He arrived overweight, which I thought was obviously poor personally, because it's his dream move. He should have come into pre-season fit. He's slowly started to show signs of dropping the weight. Hasn't happened completely yet, but the last game he played, which was against Granada at home, which doesn't sound like a tough game, but for those who've been keeping up with La Liga, they were top of the league for a long time. Granada, they're newly promoted. They play just absolutely explosive football, really high, and so it was a difficult game. They ran out 4-2 winners in the end. Hazard picked up a goal and assist. It was a really good goal as well, very well taken, a great chip over the keeper. And you could see the relief in his celebration when he scored that. But before then, it hadn't been happening. You're right. He and Gareth Bale, there's similarities with the way that they play on the wings. Both of them drift out too far, in my opinion, and they can become very isolated at points in the game. But then all of a sudden, in game, you both see them tuck in, and then they'll get in a goal and assist, and you think, well, where was they kind of have these 1 or 2 moments of sheer brilliance in the game.
Where's that been for 90 minutes?
Yeah, and then drift back out wide again. And so it's a real problem. The glue in this Real Madrid side is Karim Benzema, who, hot take, is the best number 9 in world football.
Okay.
There we are.
He's not.
And so he's been keeping this Real Madrid team together. And Hazard, one of the good aspects of Karim Benzema is how well he's able to bring players into the game, and that's where Hazard's been able to feed off and produce his best football. There's been an injury crisis at Real. There's obviously a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. At Hazard's unveiling, the fans were chanting that they wanted Kylian Mbappe. Not the greatest of starts. And so it's been a tricky start to life for Hazard. I've got a lot of sympathy for him in certain aspects, but not in others, so turning up overweight. So it's a really interesting situation.
Let's talk about Hazard of old for a second. At Chelsea in the Premier League, we saw him. He was an unbelievable player. He made 352 appearances for Chelsea and scored 110 goals and assisted another 92. He's been involved in a lot of goals there. Mm-hmm. Was the English league more suited to him? Is that what it is?
I think Hazard, for someone of his stature, is actually very physical. People forget how strong Eden Hazard actually is, and obviously with his diminutive stature, a lot of people question whether he'd be able to adapt to the English leagues. But he's so stocky for someone his size, and it really helped him with the English league in that regard. I have no doubt that he will come good for Real Madrid. The one criticism that Hazard that has always existed throughout his career is his performances in the Champions League, which is obviously all that matters to Real Madrid. They're top of La Liga at the moment. Real Madrid haven't had the best start to the season. Somehow they're top of La Liga unbeaten. Don't ask me how that has happened. I'm sure they've gotten the results wrong at some point because they haven't been that good. But no, I think he will come good for Real Madrid. He's got to step up in the Champions League because Real Madrid could finish 10th in La Liga, and as long as they have successes in the Champions League, the board will not care. That'll keep Florentino and his pockets happy. There's a lot of changes going on at Real Madrid right now. They're still in that rebuilding process. But yeah, Hazard has got to watch his back because the best player last season for Real Madrid was Vinicius Junior. He was a real shining light. Playing off that left wing as well, he's got every right to be starting week in, week out for Real Madrid, does Vinicius. And if Hazard's performances do start to slip, he's got to watch his back because that teenager will take over anything in his path. I've got no doubt of that.
And we'll talk about Real Madrid as a whole.
Yep.
Obviously, Zidane's back.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite carrying out the same kind of performances. I know the top of the league and beaten, but it's not quite the same feeling about it as it was the first time round.
No, there's no the romance. It's become clear now that Real Madrid didn't win 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Zinedine Zidane didn't win 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Cristiano Ronaldo won 3 Champions Leagues in a row.
That's very true.
He put that side on his back, and it was magnificent. And he left, and they didn't replace him. And obviously, then you had Julian Lopetegui, Santiago Solari, and then Zidane came back, and everyone thought, okay, that's okay. The great one is back. Absolutely. And it's been quite the contrary. I'm disappointed with Zidane in a lot of aspects, to be honest with you. His son and the relationship between him and his son, so not many people know, but Lucas Zidane is a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
At Real Madrid. He's currently on loan at Racing Santander. in the second division. Last season, Sergio Reguilón was a player that had come through at Real Madrid. He was a young left back. He actually replaced Marcelo for a great deal of the season. He was forced out on loan to Sevilla for this season because he had an argument with Lucas Zidane in training.
Yeah.
Zidane opted to take the side of his son, forced Reguilón out on loan. Have issues with his team selection. The problem is with Zidane is that when he came in, there was supposedly an agreement between him and Perez where he said, if I come back, I bring Paul Pogba with me. And that was the one player he's been wanting from the start is Paul Pogba. And you can see why, because Zidane and Pogba, you can imagine the things that Zizou could do with that man. He was very disappointed not to get him. He's obviously got a very strained relationship with Gareth Bale.
Very odd. So the start of the season, Bale was frozen out.
Yeah.
Bale wasn't a Real Madrid player as far as anyone was concerned. He was about this far away from moving to China. Now all of a sudden, Zidane's kind of relying on him again.
Yeah, 2 goals, 2 assists this season for Gareth Bale. It's so bizarre watching him play football at the moment because his body language is disgusting on the pitch. It's terrible. His attitude in training is just as bad. Whenever he gets injured, his efforts to recover are abysmal. But on the pitch, he just has this nonchalant, I don't care attitude, bangs a couple of goals in, gets an assist, walks off, ignores Zidane. And it's so bizarre what's going on. I can't explain it. God knows what's going through his head. He's earned himself a nickname now in the Spanish capital where he's the golfer.
Plays a lot of golf.
A lot of golf.
He's pictured more on the golf course than he is on the football pitch.
Honestly, doesn't go to any of the team bonding trainings like that outside. Doesn't socialise with the team. Makes no effort with his teammates. Just spends his time on the links playing a couple games of 18 a week. It's really bizarre. I think the problem is now that Real Madrid squad desperately needs new faces.
Refreshing.
Yeah, which is crazy when you consider they've just spent 350 million in the summer. But I think we've touched on this briefly before, whereby they didn't actually buy many players who were ready right now to come into the fold. So if you look into the, Alphonse Areola's come in, Ferland Mendy, Eder Militao, Rodrigo, Luka Jovic, all brilliant players, none of whom are ready to step up and be the new guy for Real Madrid. Obviously Hazard is that guy, but there's been no one to kind of help him with that process. If you take Hazard out of that team, you're left with the same Real Madrid starting 11 that's been starting for the back end of last season when they had so many problems. Yeah. You've got players like Isco, who in my opinion, in his position is the best in the world in that number 10 role, but nobody gets to see it because he doesn't play. And I think when David Silva leaves Manchester City, if you're looking for a like-for-like replacement, I don't think you can do much better if you're Pep Guardiola. And it's so many kind of bizarre players in the squad. Obviously there was a lot of friction between Sergio Ramos and the club last year after that, the issue with the whole Ajax, the intentional suspension, which caused problems. But as I said, unbeaten, top of the league. If you look at it from a statistical point of view, you could argue that there's not much wrong with Real Madrid right now.
They are an aging team though. They are rapidly aging. Sergio Ramos can't play football forever. I'm sure he'd love to.
Yeah.
He probably thinks he can.
Yeah.
He does rate himself quite highly. And then the strange one for me is Thibaut Courtois.
Mm-hmm.
As a goalkeeper at Chelsea, was arguably one of the best in the world. It's gone to Real Madrid and it's all just fallen apart. Do you think there's still speculation behind the scenes as to David De Gea going to Real Madrid and Courtois just thinks he's just a bit of a stopgap?
Well, it's terrible what's happened to Thibaut Courtois, really. He's now the second choice goalkeeper at Real Madrid. Alphonse Areola is coming from PSG in the space of about 2 weeks. Took his place. The half-time of the Club Bruges game, Real Madrid were 2-0 down. Everything came out in the Spanish press that Thibaut went into he was replaced at half-time. Areola came out and played the second half. Not good. A lot of things point to his form. Marca then reported in Spain that he had an anxiety attack in the changing rooms at half-time and had to be replaced. Such is the pressure of playing in the Bernabeu. Courtois looks so scared when he goes out onto that pitch because you have to be of a completely different mindset altogether to play for Real Madrid. Hazard's already been booed already. I think he was 2 games in and he was starting to be booed.
Even Ronaldo got booed.
Yeah, a lot of times. Ronaldo didn't score in a game. He was booed off the pitch. The expectations of Real Madrid are just so high, and I don't think that it can work both ways, because you saw what it did for Cristiano Ronaldo. It elevated him to a level where I don't think we've seen before, and players either thrive off that or they crumble under it. Thibaut has to do a lot to get his way back into this Real Madrid team, for his confidence, for himself, and to win the fans back on his side. It's just going to be so difficult for him right now. The Real Madrid fan base were really sad to see Keylor go to PSG. Yeah. Definitely the better goalkeeper at the moment out of the two. But the problem is obviously if you're the board, it seemed like a cut price fee, because his contract was up when Courtois signed for Real Madrid. If you remember, at Chelsea, it was expiring a season later. They picked him up for just 35 million, which in the current climate is
how much were you asking for Jack Butland?
Well, there you go. For at the time, what was a world-class goalkeeper, had a brilliant tournament at the World Cup. Yeah. Was arguably Belgium's best player in their run. But he's kind of come and it hasn't worked out at the Bernabeu. He wanted to go to Madrid. That's where his family's been the whole time. They never moved to London. They've always stayed there after his loan to Atletico. That link has maintained that he might go back to Atletico, because apparently that's where he feels more comfortable. And then you could kind of see a kind of thing where Oblak then goes to Manchester United, and De Gea comes in.
Can make that move,
as you said. But yeah, it's a crying shame for Thibaut, really. You hate to see any player look so devout of confidence, but unfortunately he's only got himself to blame. Even when he came in and he was favoured by the Bernabeu, his performances still wasn't great, and it's got to be a terrible place to be in his head right now.
So Real Madrid as a whole this season, what do you think realistically they can expect?
Well, they have to turn their performances around in the Champions League, and quickly, because 2 match weeks in are we to the Champions League, and they've lost 3-0 to PSG and drew 2-2 at home with Club Brugge. So they go to Galatasaray next, I believe, which isn't a place to go. And Galatasaray, a side who I actually think had the best transfer window of any team in Europe, signing the likes of Lemina, Falcao, made an absolutely incredible piece of business there. And going to Galatasaray and the atmosphere that they create in Turkey is never easy as it is. So that will be a tough game for Real, and obviously then they bring the likes of PSG to the Bernabeu. They're better away from home than they are. They're away from home than they are at the Bernabeu at the moment. So that kind of plays into their favour. So I wouldn't look too far to the Champions League, but it's an interesting one in La Liga, whereby none of the top 3 teams are operating at their full potential, you could argue. Barcelona obviously had no Messi at the start of the season. He's come back and they beat Sevilla 4-0, so it looks like they're going to be back to their normal winning ways. Atletico are a really stop-start team. They can't quite get things going, but a lot of new faces there, and I think Simeone's trying to mix up his tactics a little bit, so that kind of explains that. So Real Madrid could find themselves, if they can keep up this form in a 2-horse race for La Liga, but I wouldn't expect anything too big from them this season. I think Florentino is going to get his wallet out again next summer. I think that Mbappe move is happening. It's just a matter of when, to be honest with you.
The same with Paul Pogba.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Luka Modric won the Ballon d'Or, but he's 32 going on 33. Can't cover the ground. Kroos and Casemiro have been fantastic, but it's young Federico Valverde who's going to that centre mid spot with Ceballos out on loan at Arsenal, and has kind of made that his own. So he could be the longer term replacement for Luka Modric. I think we are going to continue to see a lot of changes at the Bernabeu, and hopefully it brings back success, because the Champions League doesn't quite seem right without Real Madrid battling for it, to be honest with you.
And you're just disappointed?
Yeah, all round, to be honest with you. But Tyrone Mings plays for England, so no complaints.
Right, so it's 1-1 on Quiz Ball.
Yep.
I won last week.
Yeah.
Absolutely smashed it.
Yeah.
You had really easy questions I gave you, and you didn't answer them very well. We'll go again. Are you ready?
No.
Oh, brilliant. So this is Quiz Ball. Dan, I'm going to go first because I won the last one. So, first question is, as a player, Claude Puel made 488 senior appearances for which French club?
Nice.
It's Monaco. Who is the youngest player to win a senior cap for Scotland in the 21st century? You've just told me you've got work. Hurry up and answer the question.
Ryan Gould.
No, it's Kieran Tierney. How many FA Cup winners' medals did Ryan Giggs collect as a Manchester United player?
5.
4. So you got none. Again, you got none.
No.
You're
again.
bad at this.
Oh
They were
my
easy questions as well.
God.
Much easier than
Right.
which 3 Gabonese
Right.
players scored.
Yeah, that was difficult. Right. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
How many times has David Moyes won the prestigious LMA Manager of the Year award?
Twice.
3 times. Okay, this is a good one.
Ooh.
Who is the only person born before 1960 to score a Premier League hat-trick?
Andy Cole.
Gordon Strachan.
Oh.
How about that? The highest scoring Premier League game finished 7-4. Which 2 teams played?
Portsmouth and Reading.
There you go, that's 1.
Yes!
6 questions.
Winner again.
1 right.
You are bad. That's not news. Episode 3. That's not news. Episode 3. We're done.
Cancel it.
Dan is not happy. So that is the end of this episode. Dan's walked off. The Gary Mellor interview will be live on YouTube later in the week as a full video. I'm lost without Dan. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like, share and subscribe and visit us at DawsonFootball.com.